Please, Mohammed.
I can give us, again, direct experience. When the negotiations started between the FARC and the Colombian government in 2010-11 in secret negotiation that became public in 2012. But we know that in 2012 we had with the Colombian actors we prepared a kind of an parallel agenda of the issues which were not included really in the peace agenda directly. So one of the subject was the 1312 related issues. So we had prepared the recommendations, and then we handed these recommendations to the parties, negotiating parties, to the government and the FARC, and we did a lot of follow-up afterwards. So then, for example, the women issues or gender become part of negotiations later on with the difficulties, but still then become really, so we had this direct contribution, let's say, to the negotiation from this perspective. So we were, as Geneva Code, I'm not from anymore with Geneva Code, but at that time, this is Geneva credit. We were the first organization invited by the FARC to secretly to Havana to discuss different issues which was not really on the agenda. So even though we had never met FARC before, but we were invited, but they know that we were preparing. I think it was a good contribution, positive.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we are out of time for a Q&A, but please feel free to corner our panelists at the exit of the event in an hour. You'll have that opportunity. I think the main takeaway is that although these three different negotiations were in different contexts, on different issues, they were facing the same type of challenges and dilemmas and the same type of contradictions when maneuvering these complex dynamics, whether with military actors, state actors, or non-state actors. And at CCHN, we try to collectively explore these challenges and dilemmas and see synergies and see potentially how responses from different contexts can be streamlined within the humanitarian sector and within the community of practice of frontline negotiators. And before we move on to the second part of this event, where you, the audience, you'll be having to make some of these difficult choices yourselves, we'd like to show you a video of one of our recent events in Co, about where we mobilized the community of practice around this topic of negotiating under pressure. Yep.
Basically, every negotiation, you are involved with so many actors, like several actors. Each actor has its own position and interest in the negotiation. There are demands, yet you have a responsibility to serve the people in need as a result of this negotiation. So all of it create pressure on the negotiator.
Negotiating under pressure often arises in environments where there is a lot of complex actors or complexity of actors, and there is high stakes when it comes to unpredictability in both the environment, the actors that you're engaging with, and also the context. There are often a lot of unknowns, and navigating through that is often the most difficult part.
What makes the work of negotiation and the work of the teams in the field so important is that we are there to make sure that the so much needed aid and support is received by the people who need it. In that way, our work is crucial for our organizations and for the people living in difficult contexts where we are working.
These are people who cannot meet the requirements they have. So the humanitarian assistance we deliver to them is meant to be life-saving, is meant to be helping them to be more resilient to shocks they receive.
Challenges and dilemma that I consider when I negotiate under pressure can be from the context of the negotiation itself. And understand the positions of the interlocutor. When I am in negotiations with an interlocutor, when you find that you are put under pressure in unprecedented time, so sometimes it will be very difficult for you to engage because he is always at the upper point and controlling your discussion or negotiation.
What is for me important to notice is the big challenge to build trust between us and our counterparts when we negotiate under pressure. Another challenge is for me to get access to operate in a very efficient manner in the field. Of course, we face some dilemma. For instance, to maintain the negotiation with our counterparts without compromising our principle of action.
The most difficult aspect of my job as a negotiator is centered around security. What makes it more challenging is the fact that there's a lot of uncertainty. Then comes the issue of trying to deal with the culture, language issues surrounding negotiation. Sometimes you really have to work hard in order to convey the message through translations, which is not very easy. Some information is lost along the way. It keeps me on my toes, but I love it. I love the challenge. As long as we finally manage to save lives, we remain committed to supporting the needs.
This particular retreat we are in right now has been very much focused on giving us tools or sharing with those tools for the important aspect of taking care of ourselves, of dealing with pressure, of dealing with complex situations.
The methodology, the approach. I really appreciate the fact to give the opportunity to practitioners, humanitarian practitioners, coming from different horizons, different organizations, to share peer-to-peer, to share the experience, the success, their failure. I find this methodology very, very useful.
These tools are important for us to take away from this retreat, not just for ourselves, but in fact, more importantly, for our team. As a negotiator, you're always part of a team, and that team, the health of that team, mentally and physically, is just as important as the outcome.
All right. Pascal Hunt, Julie Dunphy, Mehmet Balchi, thank you very much for sharing these experiences with us. It's been eye-opening, and please stick around with us for the next part of the event. And I'd like to invite Nicolas Evafel to the floor. Nicolas is an audiovisual producer at the ICRC and also an award-winning filmmaker. She has previously worked as a journalist for CBC, ABC, Deutsche Welle, and the BBC. And currently at the ICRC, her role is to craft stories that show the work of the organization and the work especially that is done on the front lines, in war zones, and its role in protecting the laws of war. So Nicola is going to be walking us through a project she's been involved in with the ICRC entitled Negotiating on the Front Lines. So please, a round of applause for Nicola. Welcome.
Thank you. Okay, thanks. So this is the part that's interactive. So first, I just wanted to talk a bit about, well, that's my landmine finding rat in Mozambique. But I wanted to talk about the power of storytelling and its role in humanitarian organizations. So we as a species are addicted to story. Even when the body goes to sleep, the mind stays up all night telling itself stories. When the mind is in a storytelling state, we have better attention, we're more willing to learn, and we're more open-minded. And it's interesting for organizations like the International Committee of the Red Cross and the work I do there, because it's a way for us to build support and empathy for what we do and why we work the way we work, which can be quite complicated to explain. So the frontline negotiators, or this story that we created together, was a way of taking the really strong aspects of this work that you guys do, which has every element of strong storytelling. The stakes are high, it's dangerous, it's secretive, and it really matters if it works. In a lot of ways, it's secretive in that you don't talk about the way you're working. So I don't know if any of you have seen this show. So this is Netflix's first experimentation with interactive storytelling. And in a way, interactive storytelling isn't new in that, I don't know if any of you remember in the 80s and 70s, there were the Choose Your Own Adventures children's books, where you could make decisions about how the story unfolded. But now in a digital age, you can make this, the audience can direct the narrative digitally immediately as they watch the story. So working with the frontline negotiations team at CCHN, we looked at the narratives that you guys experience, the dilemmas you face, and the ways to make it interactive. And we mapped out the narrative with 4 different endings, which we're going to work on together. But I also wanted to tell you that we took this idea to Twitter. And they really liked the idea, and they hacked Twitter a little bit to make it work on Twitter. And just to show the appetite for this kind of storytelling, it's ICRC's most liked tweet of all time, and among our top retweets. So I don't want to take you through the Twitter thread, but I want to take you to the website and play it together. But if you can, when you're making your choices, if you could raise your hand, and then we'll decide together which route and decisions we make. Okay? So I need to escape. Great. Okay. Thank you. Where's the mouse? There. Okay. Okay. So I'm gonna have to bring this over. Thank you. So you're on your way to the besieged city of Erbil. The government has authorized you to enter and deliver food. At the checkpoints, the guards say their families are suffering now. They want a cut in the aid. Do you refuse, explaining you have to prioritize those inside the besieged city? Do you agree and try to limit the amount you give them? Or do you offer to assess their needs once you've completed the distribution in the besieged city? So can you raise your arms if you think refuse? Okay. Agree? Okay, these are pros in the room. Or offer? Okay, that's pretty clear. Okay. So we have to offer. Okay, so the guards agree. When you do assess their needs, you don't see a shortage of food, but there is a problem with the water system. Your engineering colleagues come to repair it, but first the guards keep to their promise and they let you enter the besieged city. But just as you start your engines to pass the checkpoint, your colleagues radio you to warn you fresh shelling on the besieged city is imminent. The guards at the checkpoint say this is not true. Do you accept the guards' reassurances and enter the besieged city? Do you decide the risks are too high and return to your field office? Or do you request the guards contact their commander for confirmation of safe passage? So hands up for accept. Decide the risk is too high, or request the guards contact their commander. Okay. Okay. You hear the guards' superior radio confirmation that no shelling is planned for today, and you enter the besieged city. Upon arrival at the town hall, the self-appointed governor of the besieged city claims he must administer the aid himself. You fear he will favor his supporters and disadvantage those loyal to the government. Do you let him administer the aid or offer to distribute together? Together? Okay, hands up for together. It's not as fun when you guys know what you're doing. Maybe I have to go down a bit. The government agrees during the distribution, the governor agrees. During the distribution, you note 3 boxes of food have disappeared, but you're relieved that most of the food got through to those in need. While there, you see many civilians wounded and in desperate need of medical attention. Do you put the wounded in the now empty food trucks and hope the guards will let you pass and take them for medical treatment in the city? Or do you tell them you will return as soon as possible, you need to get safe passage assurances from the government for a medical evacuation? So put the wounded in the now empty truck. Tell them you will return as soon as possible. Okay. You feel awful leaving the wounded behind. Back in the field office, your boss talks to her contacts in the government and requests the green light for the medical evacuation the following day. She is successful. You return with 5 ambulances the next day. Okay, the 5 ambulances passed the checkpoint without a problem. You managed to take all 5 wounded to hospital for treatment. You feel elated for an evening. You managed to get aid in and the wounded out and treated. Well done. You took the best decisions you could. By the way, this can play out very differently, but you guys took good decisions. This interactive narrative aims to show how frontline negotiations face horrific dilemmas and have to strike a brutal balance between impact and principles. So that is the interactive narrative. And of course, it's a superficial experience, but I think it was a great way with the CECHN team to talk to the general public about what we do. So I'm looking for Kareem. Oh, there you are.
Thank you very much. So you've had a sneak peek into the lives of Pascal Hund, Julie Dunphy, and Mehmet Balci. So first of all, Pascal, what do you think of this project? Do you think it's accurate? Does it show the dilemmas that we face in the field regularly?
I cheat a bit because I saw it the other day. No, I found it extremely good. I think the participants were quite brilliant because, at the end, the outcome was good. No, I think it's quite good. I don't know, maybe you should ask others, but, even with experience, when seeing that, it reflects quite well the reality we are confronted with.
What about you, Julie? What are your thoughts?
No, I very much like it. And, when I looked at the storytelling tool the other week, because like Pascal, I had a sneak preview, I did get the answers right. But I also tried the other ones because I thought some people maybe would look at the principled humanitarian approach with the first question saying, no, we can't talk to the military, we need to get into the area. And it was a very good way to learn. And I think particularly it's moving with the times, as has already been reflected. The fact that it's so positive on Twitter, I mean, this is how people learn. They learn in short, sharp nodes. We use technology when we're moving all the time, and these short snippets are a fantastic way. So, yeah, I look forward to using it more regularly as well. Thanks.
But there's one point that I was hesitating really to leave or to take them with me. So this is, I think people are expecting you. It's good to are able to come back, but if you don't come back, you lose all the credibility. You said you didn't do whatever you should have done, maybe. Yeah. So this is the very problematic, but you have to take the decision there. So if I had a volunteer to stay with them, I would leave him with the wounded. They say, I will come back to try to do my best.
Thank you. So an example of a classic dilemma. And a dilemma, by definition, is that we're confronted by several choices that are equally undesirable. Yeah? That's the reality of humanitarian work, often. So we'd like to show you a video of what some of our practitioners, members of the CCHN Community of Practice, had to say about this project.
Yeah, I think that the storyline that this interactive storytelling project is presenting to us reflects some of the situations we do face in the field, especially in complex environments and conflictive settings.
I can just give you an example. When one day I have to negotiate with armed groups in order to carry out our activities in the area who are under the control of this armed group without compromising our principle of action. When in the scenario, the member of the armed groups trying to negotiate with the delegates, the way to divide the assistance, not considering only the area where the teams make evaluation, but also to consider the area which under the control of the armed group. I cannot say the context, but personally I face to such situation where they try to influence, they try to, to bring you to do your job, your assistant like they want, and not like you want.
For the ICRC scenario, I cannot admit that they are true stories. I can give you an example. Way back when in my project when I was coordinating and monitoring on LDP's movement, so it involved frequent movement that I have to go across several checkpoints. At one point, one of the checkpoint guy was asking me for a lift. So with the principle of humanitarian that we don't carry harmed persons or on board, so it prompted me to have kind of discussions, negotiations with the persons, how impossible it would be. I made him understand in a way that for me to carry an armed guard, putting him on board with me and taking him across the checkpoint to another place, so the impression would be very bad because when others see, and then I will not have that same whatever, same objections for them. We want to maintain also that impartiality of humanitarians because we don't want to take part.
I do think that some of the dilemmas that arise out of those challenges could be explored further. So what happens to the other actors in this scenario? What happens to your relationships at a later stage because of some of these decisions you've made when faced with the challenges?
It is important for the public to understand what we go through so that they also understand how to relate with us. Our efforts are ongoing. Whenever we get to hear of such issues, we take action.
This kind of projects or the work that the center does is key to make sure we have, first of all, the support from public and also maybe to remove some of the confusions around what we are doing in the field.
It starts to mark how we measure success. Success isn't always delivering the assistance. It may be making very principled decisions long before that and having discussions with your donors, with other partners and with stakeholders that have the ability to influence this situation at a very early stage. So I think that essentially presenting these realistic scenarios, as the storytelling project did, allows us a platform or a way to sympathize or empathize with someone who's delivering these projects and puts yourself in that position and lets you assess how you would, how would you assess those results? How would you assess the success when faced with such dilemmas?
It's worth telling so that the world should know that it's not only a normal living situations for every person that encounter more dangers than humanitarian, because we really go for it. Humanitarian always go to the front line. They go face to face with their with the perpetrators, and sometimes making sure that they put their life across the line for the benefit of people who are suffering.
Okay, so we're coming to the end of the session, but Kareem just asked me if there's any questions before we close for any of the panelists or anything about the project, the storytelling project. Oh, yeah.
I just wanted to know, how often do you do these kind of pilot storytelling stories for even training your own newly recruited staff to sometimes be a negotiator or go into the field? Because it's a very powerful way of giving a slice of reality by not being there. So how complex can you make the game, or how simple do you have to make the game to communicate the basics of negotiation?
Good question. I mean, I can talk from the communications perspective, and one of the great things about working at the International Committee of the Red Cross is we're asked to constantly learn. So I learned about interactive storytelling and applied it. But in terms of using it as a tool for training, I don't know who's best placed to answer that. It's the first time, yeah. I mean, yeah, I think it's something we could develop. But it's not really my call. Anything else before we close? Oh, yeah. I'll come to you after.
Good afternoon. I'm Christophe Barbet from the Center for Global Non-Killing, and I think you permanently miss a conscientious objector in your project. To give a concrete example, I was fine with everything going on until you got the woundeds out, and one of them died in the 24-hour. So I'm not so sure there's only one solution, and I'm not so sure the program really shows like another line. Do you have another alternative? Be creative. It's not just a question of mode or even safety. Sometimes it's a question of intelligence, and for that we need freedom of thought. And kind of I like the labyrinths, of course, and I think very happy for your success, but I still object.
I hear your objection. And yeah, it is a question about whether we make it more complicated, because it could have been more than those options at that stage. Yes, and then there was just one last question here, was it? Or was it you? Okay.
Hi. Just one little question about the negotiators, and how important is given a space to psychological support to negotiators and
even humanitarians in general,
humanitarians
probably.
in general,
Yeah.
but especially negotiator under high pressure. Yeah.
What you're talking about, and I'll hand back to them because I don't know, but it's something that I've been exploring with Andreas and the team about talking about how to deal with stress in these situations. And I don't know whether historically we have been that good at doing it.
Yeah, I think what is important, the source of stress are, I would say, manifold, and very often it's not, with my experience, it's not the negotiation that is the most stressful. It's the rest of the environment, being confronted, in combat zone, in conflict area, with daily insecurity. But your point is perfectly correct, and I think there is, the duty of care of humanitarian organization to take care of their staff, to cope with sometimes the impossible and the insecurity on a daily basis, and not only the one deriving from negotiation.
Yeah, I think from the UN perspective, we're not necessarily good at identifying that this is a stress-related issue. However, our counselling services within the UN offers you, advice and support for many different issues. Yes, it's traditionally the critical incident that usually there's psychological support immediately deployed and made available. However, within my own organization, we have a number of regional psychologists in place. We have country peer advisors and support. So we have a network and a mechanism available. And certainly, within the workplace and under the duty of care portfolio, it's certainly addressed in terms of it, but it's not necessarily, again, because there's a whole range of issues and challenges that staff have. It's not just the staff who are negotiating, it's staff who, in my organization, are hearing harrowing stories as they, face everyday protection issues. So that mechanism is available and counselling services available for them to avail of.
I would just add another layer. I think from organization perspective, when you hire people, hire staff, you should understand that really if the staff is humanitarian vocation, so if they have a really vocation to be a humanitarian, it is very important. So then it's not really, of course, there's a lot of professionalism there. You need to be professional, you need to be, you need the skills, but still the humanitarian vocation is very important. Therefore, when you send people in the difficult situations, the difficult countries, so you have to really assess really how much these people can absorb the mission. This is very important, I think, for the, I think, of course, I agree with what was said. That's my add.
Okay, I think we're going to close now. Kareem, you want to say anything?
So thank you very much for your interest in the Center of Competence on Humanitarian Negotiations and the work we've been involved in. I'd just like to thank Fight for Humanity for collaborating with us on this event. I'd also like to thank our panelists, Pascal Hunt, thank you very much. Julie Danfi, also thank you very much. Mehmet Balchi, thank you for being here. And last but not least, Nicolas, thank you very much for sharing with us your project. It's very interesting. It's been one of the highly tweeted projects of the ICRC recently. So thank you, and we look forward to further collaboration with you as well. All right, thank you.